It was the denial of the reality or the validity of our perceptions.
Well, if this is the situation that we're in right now, this brings another point. You talked about the trend into mysticism, but in your latest book, I know you talk not only of mysticism, but this is only one part of a trend that you have traced. And you call the mystics the witch doctors, as I remember.
That's right.
And you also talk about the rule of force and the men of force, the atlas of the world. So how do they fit into your framework?
Well, you see, in fact, reason is man's only faculty for perceiving reality. Reason is the only means by which man can achieve knowledge of reality. And by reason, of course, I mean the faculty which perceives, identifies, and integrates the material provided by man's senses. Therefore, reason is man's faculty for perceiving reality. But reason does not work automatically. Man have to decide, will, to think and to perceive. Man can receive sensory data or integrate sensations into perceptions automatically. But they cannot form conceptions. They cannot form abstractions automatically. That has to be evolutional function of man's consciousness. And since most men, guided by their philosopher, do not wish to think, and they consider thought and reason either dangerous or impotent or too much of an effort. Most human cultures, with very rare exceptions, have been ruled by what I call witch doctors. And a witch doctor is any man who takes his emotions, not his thinking, but his emotions, as his tool of cognition and his guide to reality. He functions by means of faith. He acts on the basis of blind beliefs, which in fact are nothing more than his wishes. He is guided by his wishes, by his whims, which he takes as a guide to reality. No matter on what level of culture you observe him, that type of man is a witch doctor in the sense of his psychoepistemology, of the way he uses his mind. And since he has to deal with other men, since on the ground of emotions no one can deal with reality nor with people, the natural ally of the witch doctor will always be the type I call Attila. That is the primitive, savage, tribal chief, the man who acts only on the range of the moment, on his immediate sensory perceptions, who is contemptuous of and refuses to consider ideas, principles, or abstractions, and whose way of dealing with reality and with other men is by means of brute force. Attila is either the gangster, or the dictator, or the military conqueror, or any man who believes that force is practical. Any man who refuses to think and wishes to loot, enslave, or force others. All through history, all major cultures, with very few exceptions, were ruled by an alliance of the man of faith, that is the witch doctor, with the man of force, which is the Attila. The witch doctor provided the goals and the values and the moral sanction for Attila to enforce in the world. And in today's world, you see the same phenomenon in allegedly civilized terms, but the essence remains the same: a dictator, which is the Attila, a man like Khrushchev, and his political theorists, the modern leftist, liberal, socialist intellectuals, who are philosophically Attilaists. They, in effect, provide an allegedly non-mystical moral justification, a philosophical justification for Attila and for the rule of brute force. I call them the neo-mystics, because they are as much against the validity of reason as were the original jungle witch doctors.
I can see the relationship of what the mystic or the neo-mystic can give to the Attilas, but why do the mystics need the Attilas? What is the relationship the other way?
Why do the mystics?
Yes.
Because the mystics, first, a motivating force is dread of physical reality. Since it is a man who holds his emotions above reality, who in any conflict between his feelings and the facts of reality will select his feelings and will abandon reality or deny it. he cannot deal with reality at all. And his mysticism is a form of escape from the necessity to deal with reality or with facts. Therefore, he needs Attila as a protector. He needs Attila to save him from the necessity of dealing with facts, to provide his material livelihood, and to enforce his edicts on the victims.
Well, earlier you said that each culture should have its philosopher, and then the intellectuals should be the people who more or less put the philosophy into action.
That's
now,
right.
It seems to me that there's another side, another issue of this too. What about science?
Well, science is a very recent phenomenon. Science is, of course, the product of the 19th century, of the Industrial Revolution, of capitalism, of a free society. Now, I must mention the third type of man who has been very seldom the ruler of history or of any society. He has been the forgotten and exploited man of history. That is the man who lives by means of reason. That is the man who, in his psychoepistemology, is not guided by his immediate perceptions nor by his emotions, but by logic, by his concepts, by reason. That is the man whom I call the producer. He is the man who creates not only the material values of mankind, but also and above all the intellectual, the philosophical values. The first producer in history, in this higher sense of the word, would be Aristotle, who was the first rational philosopher. Scientists certainly should be producers. They are the men who are supposed to be, and by the nature of their profession, have to deal with the study of reality by means of using reason. Unfortunately, today, most of them, outside of their own narrow profession, outside of their laboratory, in effect, are turning more mystical than any other group of men. The fault is partly theirs, but predominantly it's the fault of philosophers. Since there is no philosophical guidance at all, many scientists today are turning to a witch doctrine type of mysticism of their own.
You mentioned producers. Aside from those people who give us intellectual products, what about the businessman? You've talked about capitalism. I'd like to know his role in this.
Well, the businessman also is as recent a product as the intellectual. Before the birth of capitalism, there were no professional businessmen, and there were no professional intellectuals. Both the mind and material production and trade were enslaved and ruled by the various combinations of Attilas and witch doctors, which means by a powerful government, by an absolutist type of government, whether it was the feudal absolutism or the absolute monarchies of Europe of the past Renaissance period. In any case, the producers of material goods, the traders, and the producers of ideas, the teachers, philosophers, the early scientists, were men without official status, without a profession, and at the total mercy of the political rulers, which means at the mercy of rule by force. It is only since the Industrial Revolution, the birth of a free society, the society of capitalism, that there was a new class of men, which is the free producers of material goods, the businessmen, the industrialists. They, of course, are the producers in the strictest sense of the word, or should be, but they are the greatest victims of today's society. They're the ones who have been betrayed by modern intellectuals, and in this sense, both businessmen and intellectuals will commit suicide by destroying each other, and the fault belongs to the intellectuals. The businessman is the man who has to use his mind to deal with reality, to study facts, to produce material goods. He is the man who serves as the transmission belt of the discoveries of science and carries the products of science to all levels of society. He is the one who takes the invention of a theoretical scientist or of an inventor, transforms them into useful products, and putting them into mass production makes them available to all levels of society. The businessman is the man who has achieved the enormous, historically miraculous rise in the standard of living of mankind during the 19th century. He is the one who has lived up to the role of a producer, to the role of a rational, creative man. But the intellectuals have never given him credit for it, have regarded him as if he were an Attila, and being afraid of freedom themselves have been looking from the start of the Industrial Revolution for some form of an Attila to protect them, the intellectuals, against the free market of ideas.
Well, you know, you've been talking about the bankruptcy of our modern intellectuals.